Speaking of the rangers, as I said, they were really part of the community in those days. And there was just the ranches here, 8 or 10 ranches was all there was here in those days for the most part, with the exception of bench lands. There was a number of people had summer cottages in bench lands, cabins that Guy Gibson had built, and they would buy and spend weekends and summers in. I remember one time a Boy Scout was lost up here. There's some scout troop had come up here for something or other, and this little kid about 10 or 12 years old or whatever he was got lost, and the ranger came around. There was no phones in those days, and he drove around the ranches and said, "I need you to help me hunt for this scout. Be at the ranger station at daylight tomorrow. Bring a horse, a sleeping bag and provisions, and a rifle and provisions for 3 days." And everybody just dropped whatever they were doing and went up and helped the ranger hunt for this kid. Unfortunately, it had been cloudy, rainy kind of weather. And the second day, the clouds lifted, and the kid spotted the Mockingbird Tower, and he walked up there. And then the towerman radioed that he had the boy, and everything was fine. And the same with fighting fires. There was different times the rangers would come along and say, "We've got a fire on LaSuer Creek," or wherever it would be. "Will you come and help us?" And ranchers would drop everything they were doing and go and help put out the fire, because most of the fires in those days were upwind of us, so we had self-interest in that as well. And I don't know if they even ever got paid for doing that. It was just part of what you did. So I remember my dad telling a story. The rangers up at the Ghost, there was the head ranger's and the assistant ranger's house, and they were about 100 feet apart in a few outbuildings. The office was in the head ranger's house. And the rangers in the day were hired on their ability to live in the bush, to ride a horse, to work a forest fire with an axe, to keep track of hunters and look after the landscape, basically, keep track of the loggers and whatnot. But they were very often just old cowboys that got hired on to do the job. And my dad was up there one day and said to one of these, the crusty old fellow that was the head ranger, and he said, "Well, how's things around here these days?" And the ranger said, "They're not worth a damn." My dad said, "Well, what's the matter?" He said, "The houses are too close together." He said, "If the men don't get to fighting, the women do." So, but ultimately, they moved the rangers all to town. And we don't have a ranger who lives in the forest anymore. And you can see evidence of that if you drive up the road and take a look at all the abuse that's going on up there. But we still have an Alberta Forest Service, but it's a rare day you ever see a forest ranger. They used to come and count the cows out. We had this grazing permit, and we pay so much a cow a month to put the cattle out there. So on turnout day, which used to be the 15th of June, a ranger would come down, count the cows out the gate, make sure that everything was in order. But of course, several of the ranches wanted to go out at the same time. And when Ray Hill was the ranger at the Ghost, his wife was very good with horses, and she used to ride the 8 miles or so down from the ranger station and meet us at the forestry boundary gate, and she would do the count that day. And of course, it gave my mom and her a chance to have a big old visit, and we did that for years. Now they don't count the cows. They've sort of concluded that we just sign a statement and say this is how many cows we put in, and it works fine. So, but it was a different deal then. In fact, when rural electrification came to this valley, I think it was 1958. You had to have a certain number of farms, and if you got a minimum number of farms, there was some government funding available to help pay for the cost of putting in the transmission lines. And they were one farm short, or one ranch short of the number they needed. So they just called the ranger station a farm. And he had horses and he had a milk cow. So it became a farm. And it made the difference between getting the grants to finance the rural electrification program of the day. So that's how we got the power up the valley.